A while back, I made a short explaining why Link becomes a wolf in Twilight Princess. The short answer? Japanese history and mythology. But that short barely scratched the surface, because Wolf Link wasn't just inspired by what wolves meant in folklore. He's also inspired by what happened when they disappeared. On January 23, 1905, the last confirmed Japanese wolf was captured in the Nara Prefecture and killed. A species that had been an integral part of Japanese culture and folklore for thousands of years was gone in the blink of an eye. Over a century later, Twilight Princess was released, and whether it was intentional or not, the form taken by its main hero feels like a poetic tribute to an animal the country had lost. So in today's video, we're going to go further than my original short did and discuss the real-world influences behind Hyrule's furriest hero. Before we dive into some folklore, it's worth mentioning that one of the biggest influences for Wolf Link came from a dream that Eiji Aonuma once had where he was a wolf locked in a prison cell. But while that dream may explain where the idea for Wolf Link came from, it's hard to ignore just how many similarities there are between Wolf Link and Shinto folklore. With that out of the way, let's start with some general context. For thousands of years, Japan was home to two unique species of wolves. These were the Japanese wolf, also known as the Honshu wolf, and the Hokkaido wolf, also known as the Ezo wolf. If that last name rings a bell to some of you, that's because the Ezo wolf was featured prominently in 2025's Ghosts of Yotei. While the Hokkaido wolf is fascinating in its own right, most folklore seems to be based around the Japanese wolf, as it was the most prominent species across mainland Japan. Being one of the earliest animals present in the region, the Japanese wolf found itself being incorporated into Shinto folklore. One of Japan's oldest shrines, the Mitsumine Shrine, is actually dedicated to the Japanese wolf, which can be seen through the numerous statues of wolves that protect the shrine. To put into perspective exactly how old the Mitsumine Shrine and the idolization of wolves are, the shrine itself predates written history in Japan. The earliest recorded mention of the shrine comes from the Kojiki, the oldest written chronicle of Japanese folklore, which places the shrine's construction around 150 CE. Wolves were seen as spiritual guardians and protectors against calamities. It was believed that wolf fangs, hides, and fur could ward off evil spirits, and they were commonly used to create protective charms. This belief was largely thanks to the wolf's association with Yama no Kami, or mountain spirits, as it was believed that wolves were their divine messengers sent to ward off evil and protect villages. These beliefs coincide very nicely with the role that Link plays in Twilight Princess. To rid Hyrule of the Twilight, Link is tasked with reviving the dormant spirits of light that inhabit the Faron, Eldin, and Lanayru provinces. These light spirits are the guardian deities of their respective provinces, and they almost perfectly fit the role of a Yama no Kami. Link, therefore, acts as the divine messenger for each of these spirits, cleansing each province of evil and protecting its inhabitants. But the connection between wolves and divine figures actually goes deeper. In many cases, wolves were not just viewed as messengers of the gods, but rather as gods themselves. This is reflected in the Japanese word for wolf, okami. Depending on the kanji used when writing, okami can mean either wolf or great god. And yes, as many people mentioned in the comments of the original short, this is why the game Okami is named the way it is. These beliefs can once again be connected back to Wolf Link. While he is in no way a god or deity, he does possess divine protection. While normal individuals are turned into spirits upon entering the Twilight, Link is able to retain his physical form thanks to the protection of the Triforce of Courage, albeit considerably altered. The belief of wolves being divine figures is also one that is shared by Midna's people, the Twilight. During the game, Midna tells Link that in the Twilight Realm, a legend speaks of a hero appearing in the form of a, quote, divine beast. No, not that one. But the Japanese wolf wasn't just viewed as a divine figure or messenger. To many people, the wolf was seen as a guardian of agriculture, believe it or not. Many farmers would pray for wolves to come into their fields because they would keep away the pests that would graze on them. These pests included rabbits, deer, and get this, boar. This is quite possibly one of the strongest connections between Wolf Link and the Japanese wolf. As the hero, it was Link's duty to protect the people of Hyrule, the crops, from Ganondorf. But beyond being a guardian of the physical world, the Japanese wolf held an equally important role in the spiritual world. There are multiple cases throughout Shinto folklore where some supernatural being or divine figure takes on the form of a wolf, and after researching as many as I could, I believe I found one that bears some striking similarities to Wolf Link, while another that reminds me of the growth Link experiences on his journey. First, we have the Okuri Okami, or the Sending Off Wolf. The Okuri Okami, also known as the Okuri Inu, is a yokai that lives on mountain passes and forested roads. It is a nocturnal spirit that first appears at twilight, taking on the form of a wolf or dog. The Okuri Okami closely follows behind lone travelers, appearing as if it's sending off an old friend. In some cases, it might even look like it's escorting a traveler by walking alongside them. The Okuri Okami will follow a traveler down a dark road, walking when they walk and stopping when they stop. If the traveler trips, however, it will lunge at them with supernatural speed and devour them instantly. While it might sound like a curse to have an Okuri Okami following you, there was one notable benefit. As long as the Okuri Okami is following you, no other dangerous animals or yokai would dare to come near you. Should the traveler make it home, they should turn around and thank the Okuri Okami for making sure they got home, as well as leave an offering of food out for it. Afterwards, it will disappear into the shadows, never to bother that traveler again. Now there are a few parts of the Okuri Okami's lore that correspond nicely with Wolf Link. They both have an association with night or twilight. They both attack by lunging with supernatural speed. They both ward away danger. But I think the strongest connection between the two is the alternate name for the Okuri Okami, the Escorting Wolf. Throughout the game, especially during the hunt for the pieces of the fused shadow, Midna is forced to rely on Link. As a Twilight, she is unable to exist in the light world and must stay in Link's shadow as he goes from place to place. He is escorting her across Hyrule. He is a literal escorting wolf from the moment they meet until the moment they part. The second wolf that I want to draw attention to goes by the name of Okuchi no Makami, which roughly translates to large-mouthed god or true god with a big mouth. This deity takes the form of a large white wolf, protecting both crops and homes from fires, theft, and evil spirits. While the depiction of a guardian wolf does match very well with Wolf Link, I think that Okuchi no Makami has far more in common with another character thanks to the central myth surrounding the deity. The story goes that long ago, in roughly the 2nd century, the legendary prince Yamato Takeru was journeying through the Okuchichibu Mountains on a military expedition with his men. As they were walking, an evil spirit in the shape of a deer appeared before them, accompanied by a mist. Believing it was trying to lead them somewhere, the prince and his men followed the deer, unaware that the mist was growing thicker and thicker. Before long, the mist had thickened into a dense fog that made it impossible to see. The evil spirit had completely vanished, leaving Yamato Takeru and his men utterly lost. But as all hope seemed lost, a large white wolf appeared in front of them. It proceeded to lead the prince and his men down the mountain and out of the forest to safety. Grateful for the wolf's kindness, Yamato Takeru told the wolf to remain on the mountain and fight evil, dubbing it the Okuchi no Makami, and before long, he had a shrine built in the wolf god's honor, the Mitsumine Shrine. Here's a fun fact: the legend of Okuchi no Makami is actually what inspired Moro, the white wolf goddess from Princess Mononoke. That movie just so happened to be one of the main inspirations for Breath of the Wild. Pretty cool how it all comes full circle, huh? Anyway, while this story doesn't necessarily relate to Wolf Link, it almost perfectly parallels the relationship between Link and another character in the game, the hero's shade. At the start of his journey, Link is essentially thrust into the role of hero. He was a ranch hand living in Ordon Village with very basic knowledge of how to fight. Sure, Russell likely taught him a few things, but he really isn't much of a fighter. Suddenly, he's being told by this divine figure that he's a hero chosen by the gods themselves to save Hyrule. I imagine that, although the game never explicitly tells us, Link is probably a little scared, confused, and unsure what to do. He is, by definition, lost. And as he wanders through the dense Faron woods towards the forest temple, who appears to guide him? A golden wolf. Link is then transported to a spiritual plane shrouded in a dense fog, where he meets the one who can help him. Just as Okuchi no Makami appeared to guide Yamato Takeru, the hero's shade has appeared to guide Link out of the fog. Over the course of the game, the hero's shade teaches Link his secret techniques, guiding him closer to becoming the hero he was meant to be. By the end of the game, Link has not only grown into a better swordsman, but into the hero that Hyrule needs. Thanks to the guidance of the Golden Wolf, Link has found his way and can, as the hero's shade says, gaze to the future with vision unclouded. Looking back at everything we've covered so far, it seems very unlikely that these parallels between Wolf Link and the Japanese wolf are anything more than coincidences. Whether they were divine messengers, sacred beings, or spiritual guardians, the Japanese wolf occupied a place of deep respect within Shinto folklore and Japanese culture. Unlike in many cultures of Europe and North America, wolves weren't feared as monsters, but revered as guardians, which makes what happened to them all the more heartbreaking. Despite centuries of reverence, the Japanese wolf would eventually disappear forever. By the early 20th century, the species had been driven to extinction. By now, you're probably wondering two things. What happened, and how does any of this relate to Twilight Princess? Well, to answer that last question, we have to answer the first one. The image of the Japanese wolf began to shift around the early 17th century due to two main factors: urbanization and rabies. As cities began to expand, more people began to encroach on the territory of the Japanese wolf. With many of their usual food sources being hunted or scared off, some wolves had to turn to a different source: horses. While wolf attacks on livestock were relatively common in both Europe and North America, they weren't much of a problem in Japan. This was because livestock made up such a small portion of Japanese agriculture, and the animals that were present were more so used for transportation rather than food. Although wolf attacks on horses weren't unheard of, they were relatively infrequent, with there being a total of 270 attacks between 1644 and 1672. Unfortunately, these numbers would increase as time went on, and worse still, the late 17th century also saw an increase in attacks on humans. As the fear of wolves began to spread, so too did the efforts to hunt them. The first bounty on wolves was placed in 1701, and by 1742, professional wolf hunters were using firearms and poison, making their work significantly easier. At the same time, the introduction of rabies made the wolves' situation that much more dire, with the first report of a rabid wolf or dog in Japan occurring in 1732. Following the Meiji Restoration, it became national policy to hunt any wolf on sight, leading to large-scale extermination campaigns called inugari, or dog hunts. In 1889, the Hokkaido wolf was declared extinct. Just 16 years later, on January 23, 1905, the last confirmed Japanese wolf, a young male, was captured in the village of Higashi Yoshino and killed. Despite everything, though, Japan never forgot what it had lost. In 1987, a life-sized bronze statue was erected in Higashi Yoshino as a memorial to the Japanese wolf. It's not often that an extinct predator is remembered with this much reverence and respect, but then again, the Japanese wolf wasn't just another predator. It spent centuries as a guardian, a deity, and a messenger from the gods. Which brings us back to Twilight Princess. Nintendo has never explicitly stated that the Japanese wolf inspired Wolf Link's betrayal, but whether intentional or not, I've come to believe that some elements of Twilight Princess can be viewed as a commentary on their extinction. While I know that sounds absolutely insane, all I ask is if you've made it this far already, then just hear me out for a few more minutes. While there are many themes present throughout Twilight Princess, one of its strongest is the idea of balance. Balance is a recurring theme throughout the series, with the most notable example being the Triforce. The only way that someone can wield its full power is by having a perfect balance of all three virtues: power, wisdom, and courage. If someone with an unbalanced heart tries to use the Triforce, the relic will separate into 3 pieces. But just as the Triforce itself represents balance, so too do its wielders. In his final speech in Twilight Princess, which was mostly cut from the game, Ganondorf would have said the following: "When the Chosen Ones appear, they are always born into this world in perfect balance." What Ganondorf says here, and in the rest of this cut speech, is very akin to what Demise says at the end of Skyward Sword. Where there is a Link and a Zelda, there will always be a Ganondorf, and vice versa. Whenever Hyrule is in danger, a hero will rise to save it. But whenever Hyrule is at peace, evil will rise to create chaos. Zelda also acknowledges this balance on 2 separate occasions. Just before sacrificing herself to save Midna, Zelda says that our world is one of balance. Just as there is light to drive away darkness, so too is there benevolence to banish evil. She references this balance again during the final cutscene. As Midna is about to return to the Twilight Realm, she comments on how light and shadow can't mix. Zelda then replies, "Shadow and light are 2 sides of the same coin. One cannot exist without the other." Light and dark keep each other in check. If one force were to go completely unchecked, it would begin to spread out of control. This is the exact problem that we see in Twilight Princess with the Twilight, and it's also the exact problem that Japan is currently facing. If you recall from earlier in the video, I said that the Japanese wolf was a protector of agriculture because of how they preyed on pests like boar. In fact, the Japanese wolf was the main predator of the Japanese boar, keeping the population in check. But now that the Japanese wolf is extinct, the boars have no natural predators, allowing them to essentially run rampant. According to a 2018 report from Japan's Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries, wild boars dealt a total of 4.7 billion yen worth of damage to crops. In fact, in most parts of Japan, the only predator to the boar is humans. But due to the aging population in rural areas, there aren't many people who are able to hunt them. This means that there is nothing stopping the boars from posing a threat to farms and people. As dangerous and scary as they might have been to the people at the time, the Japanese wolves were an essential part of the ecosystem. When the wolves were removed, the consequences of doing so didn't just vanish with them, they're still being felt today. Whether intentional or not, Wolf Link embodies many of the same roles that the Japanese wolf once held: a divine messenger, a guide, a protector, and most importantly, a force meant to restore balance to a world plunged into chaos. Twilight Princess reminds us that light needs shadow, and courage needs wisdom and power. Just like Hyrule, our own world relies just as heavily on balance, and it's up to us to do what we can to maintain that balance. The Japanese wolf may no longer roam the forests and mountains of Japan, but through its stories, and maybe even through the hero of Twilight himself, its spirit still does.